The last thing I heard before the door clicked behind me was the low hum of the dishwasher she forgot to load. Not crying, not apologies, not a fight, just that soft, mechanical hum, washing nothing. The couch cushion was still warm from where I'd sat for 3 hours, holding a box I never thought I'd have to fill. Not with that note, not with that flash drive, not with that photograph, the one from the beach where she swore she was off the grid with her sister. I had to fold it in half just to get it to fit. There was no speech, no farewell, just the clean silence of a decision already made and a home that didn't deserve a second goodbye. She'll wake up in a few hours, maybe wonder where I went, maybe not. But eventually she'll notice the laundry basket is gone. The yellow mug she hated is missing from the drying rack. The box of old concert tickets under the bed vanished. And the wedding photo? The one we had framed in that fake rustic wood with the little carved hearts? I didn't take it. I snapped it in half and left it on the kitchen counter, face down, next to the charger she never lets me use. I didn't plan this. I didn't have a hotel booked. I didn't stash money in the glove compartment like some escape movie. I just stood there in the hallway with my fingers twitching and my mouth dry, realizing the scariest thing about leaving wasn't walking out. It was knowing she wouldn't chase me. She'd already let me go a long time ago, slowly, secretly, like a magician making something disappear in plain sight. One skipped dinner here. One accidental text with a wrong name there. One suspicious smile she didn't bother to hide. I had my suspicions for months, but I ignored them like I ignore the blinking engine light on my car, hoping if I don't look, it won't break down. Last night broke everything. It wasn't the lipstick on the wine glass that wasn't hers, or the perfume I'd never smelled before in our sheets, or even the dinner reservation I never knew she made. It was the way she said, "I'm tired," when I asked her what was wrong. Like I was the burden, like she was the victim. So I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I didn't ask who he was. I just waited until she fell asleep, grabbed the things that still felt like mine, and walked out. Quiet. Steady. Forgettable. Just like I'd become to her. No goodbyes. No scenes. Just one last breath in the living room that used to smell like us. And now didn't smell like anything at all. I'll write more when I stop shaking. It took her 11 hours to realize I was gone. Not 1. Not 3. 11. I watched the first missed call come in while sitting on the stiff mattress of a budget roadside motel, my duffel bag on the floor, and the room smelling faintly of old carpet and desperation. The name on the screen flashed like a warning I didn't need anymore. Raina's speech balloon. The little chat bubble she never removed, even after she stopped texting me good night. I didn't answer. Instead, I stared at the warped ceiling and listened to the sound of someone else's shower running in the room next door, thinking how strange it is that the world keeps going like nothing happened. You can make the biggest decision of your life, to leave the woman you once imagined deathbed conversations with, and across the paper-thin wall, someone's humming a pop song like it's just any other Tuesday. When her voicemail came in, it was just breathing at first. A second too long. Then her voice, trying to stay calm, like she hadn't already felt the tremble behind it. "Ben, if this is about last night, please don't be dramatic. I fell asleep. That's all. Can you call me back so we can talk like adults?" She always said that, like adults, as if my silence was some kind of childish rebellion instead of survival. But she didn't know I saw it. Not the act, no. I never caught her mid-kiss or found her tangled in someone else's sheets. I found something worse, the absence. It started small, like rot under floorboards. Her phone would buzz and she'd flip it over like it was a reflex. She started showering in the evening, not morning. She bought new underwear she didn't wear around me. I thought I was paranoid. But paranoia doesn't explain why her gym bag had men's cologne on the zipper. I asked her once, gently, awkwardly, "Do you still feel like we're us?" She blinked like she hadn't expected the question. Then she laughed and said, "God, Ben, you read too many Reddit posts. That was 2 months ago." I stopped asking. The day after I left, she started fixing things she never noticed were broken. A dozen texts. First irritated, then frantic, then pitiful. She tried calling my mom, whom she hasn't spoken to in over a year because they had a spat about Thanksgiving. She even messaged my coworker Todd on Facebook, which was somehow the most surreal part of all of it. Todd sent me a screenshot. "Have you seen Ben? I think he's not well. Please tell him I'm worried." Not well? That was rich, coming from someone who used to roll her eyes when I cried watching commercials with dogs in them. Someone who once told me therapy was for people who can't handle life. And now she was painting me as unstable because I finally grew quiet enough for her to hear herself. She didn't want me back. She wanted the version of me that didn't know, that still made coffee at 6:30 a.m. and kept pretending I didn't hear the text alerts from Kieran, gym guy. I sat on the motel bed reading her texts backward, like maybe if I reversed them, they'd spell out something honest. But every word dripped with her usual spin. Let's talk. You're being unfair. Why now? Why like this? Because there's no ceremony for leaving someone who didn't hit you, didn't scream at you, didn't break your bones, just broke your trust in slow, methodical inches. I didn't need to catch her with him to know she gave him pieces of herself she stopped offering me. Laughter, touch, secrets. You don't need proof to feel abandoned. You just need absence. And I wasn't going to sit there and wait for the apology that was really a negotiation. So I turned off my phone, laid back on the cold sheets, and for the first time in years, I slept through the night. I didn't dream of her. I didn't dream at all. 3 days. That's how long I lasted before I broke the silence. Not because I missed her voice. I didn't. It was the curiosity. That twitchy, stomach sick you get when you know the story she's telling everyone else is not the one you lived through. I needed to hear how she'd bend it, spin it, sanitize it. I wasn't calling her to reconnect. I was calling to watch the illusion crumble in real time. I used a payphone outside a gas station that smelled like burned popcorn and rain-soaked asphalt. I didn't plan it that way, it just felt right. Like dialing into a ghost of a life I used to live. I punched in her number like I was opening a safe I hoped was empty. She picked up on the second ring. Not with a sob or a scream. No, Raina answered with that same cool composure she used when canceling dinner plans or talking to HR. Ben. That single syllable held so much restrained performance it made my skin crawl. I didn't say anything at first. I just listened. She paused, then exhaled like I was a skittish animal she was trying not to scare off. I'm glad you called, she said. I've been so worried. Worried. That word again. Like I was the reckless one. Like I had destabilized our marriage by daring to vanish from a house that had already emotionally evicted me. She kept going before I could answer. Look, I know you've been overwhelmed. You internalize everything. And I get it. I do. But this disappearing act, it's not okay. You don't just walk away from a marriage without a conversation. Now I spoke. Not with rage. Not with bitterness. Just one quiet sentence. You walked away a long time ago. I just finally caught up. There was silence on the other end, but not the kind that signals realization. This was a tactical pause, the kind she used when she was about to steer the conversation somewhere more comfortable for her. I haven't cheated on you, Ben, she said. If that's what this is about. I didn't answer that either. I didn't need to. She knew. I could hear it in the faint tremble of her breath. The way she said it like a headline she wanted to believe, not a truth she actually lived. She continued, faster now. You know things have been tense. Work's been crazy, and I know I've been distracted, but you just shutting down like this? It's cruel. You didn't even leave a note. You just vanished. That's not fair. That's what stung the most. Not the betrayal. Not the lies. The fact that she saw my leaving as the greatest crime in our story. Not the months of withdrawal. Not the late nights. Not the he's just a friend texts. No, the moment I decided to stop pretending was the one she took personally. I told her I wouldn't be coming back. That I didn't need her to confess anything. I already knew what kind of love we had, and more importantly, what kind we didn't. That's when her tone changed. No more soft concern. She snapped like a mask falling off. So what? You're just throwing everything away? After all the work I put into us? After I supported you when you were laid off? After I carried this relationship for years? I felt a laugh slip out, bitter, hollow, involuntary. You carried what? Your phone charger and your gym bag to someone else's place. Silence again. This one hit. She didn't deny it. Didn't even pretend to be insulted by the accusation. That was the last piece I needed. Her quiet was the confession. And somehow it hurt less than I thought it would. Because in that moment, I wasn't the one abandoned. I was just late to acknowledging the truth. And she wasn't a villain. Just a person who ran out of love and didn't know how to say so without wreckage. We ended the call with nothing resolved. No closure. No screaming. Just the hum of the line going dead. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't the one being left behind. I was just walking a different way. Back in the motel, I stared at my reflection in the dark TV screen. Not heroic, not tragic, just free. But freedom doesn't come clean. Because the next morning, I got a message that changed everything. I woke up to a message from someone I didn't recognize. No profile photo. Just a gray silhouette and a name I didn't know. Gray 1084. The message read, "You don't know me, but you need to see this. I didn't know she was married. Attached was a zip file and a sentence that might as well have punched me through the screen. Check the audio first. Now, I've made plenty of bad decisions in my life. Staying silent when I should have spoken. Letting things slide for the sake of peace. Ignoring my own gut because I didn't want to seem insecure. But opening that file wasn't one of them. I ran a full scan first, paranoid, half expecting a virus. But no, it was clean. Just 3 files. A voice recording, a blurry screenshot of a text thread, and a photo, time-stamped, location tagged. I listened to the audio with my stomach in knots, like I already knew what I'd hear, but still hoped I was wrong. It was her. Raina. She was laughing, tipsy, too loud in what sounded like the back seat of a rideshare. Her voice, unmistakable. Then, another voice, a man's, asking, "So, does your husband know about us yet?" She laughed even harder and said, "What husband?" "Oh, you mean my roommate who pays the bills." I didn't feel rage. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there with my jaw clenched so tight I could hear my own teeth grinding in my skull. That sentence didn't just confirm what I'd suspected. It reframed my entire reality. I wasn't just betrayed. I was erased. The man, whoever he was, apologized in the text screenshot. Said he had no idea she was married. Said he wouldn't have touched her if he'd known. "She told me you were her emotionally abusive ex who still lived in the house out of pity." I laughed, an ugly guttural sound. Raina had built herself a new truth brick by brick while I was washing her damn wine glasses. I responded to Gray 1084. "Thanks. I'm not mad at you. You did me a favor." He replied a minute later. "She's done it before. I found another guy. Same story. You're not the first. Might not be the last." Something inside me gave way at that. Not because I didn't believe it. Because I did. And I hated that part of me. The part that still wanted her to be better than this. Still searched for a version of her I could respect. Even now. By noon, I'd driven back to our old apartment. Not to confront her, but to collect the last box I hadn't grabbed. It had been sitting in the hallway closet for years, gathering dust, old tax returns, a folder of letters I'd written to her during our early years, and a USB drive with photos from our wedding. The door was unlocked. I stepped in slowly, like I was trespassing in a museum of bad memories. The kitchen still had that stupid chalkboard sign she bought that said, "Bless this mess." Only now the mess wasn't quirky. It was surgical, cold, calculated. She wasn't home. But on the counter, as if placed there just for me, was her phone. Unlocked. Sitting face up next to a glass of white wine that hadn't even finished sweating. I don't know what possessed me. I know it's wrong. But I picked it up. And what I saw wasn't just infidelity. It was artistry. Multiple threads. Multiple names. A different version of herself for every man. One, she was in a marriage she felt trapped in. To another, widowed young and recovering from heartbreak. She even told one guy she was a free spirit who didn't believe in labels or contracts. I didn't take screenshots. I didn't forward them to myself. I just stood there, letting the nausea rise in waves. Then I did something I never thought I would. I left her phone exactly where I found it. Open, vulnerable, ready for her to discover what she had unintentionally exposed. And before I walked out the door, I placed one thing on the kitchen counter. Not a note, not a threat, just the broken wedding photo, snapped in half the morning I left, now set face up between her wine glass and her unlocked phone. I wanted her to see what she'd thrown away. Not with words, not with revenge, just with absence. I walked back to my car with nothing but the last box in my arms. But in the bottom of that box was something I hadn't seen in years, and it changed everything. I didn't even remember putting it in there. It was tucked beneath an old envelope full of paycheck stubs and utility receipts, hidden at the very bottom of that weathered cardboard box I had just thrown into my back seat like it was nothing. I was parked outside a diner off I-78, chewing on rubbery eggs, trying to convince myself I still had a plan. I didn't. I had $314 left in my checking account, one duffel bag, and a creeping sense that I didn't know who I had been married to, or maybe even who I was anymore. I opened the box absent-mindedly, hoping to dig out a phone charger or maybe just distract myself from the thought that I hadn't spoken to another human face-to-face in 48 hours. That's when I saw it, a plain envelope with my name written on the front in her handwriting. No stamp, no return address, no date, just bin. scrawled in blue ink with that slight leftward tilt her pen always made when she was in a hurry. I stared at it like it was a bomb. I could tell from the way the paper curled at the edge that it wasn't recent. The ink had started to feather out at the corners, like it had been written and then buried, maybe accidentally, maybe not. I don't know why I hadn't seen it before. Maybe she put it there, knowing I'd find it only if I ever really left. Maybe it was just a mistake, another piece of forgotten fiction in the mess she left behind. But I opened it. It was 3 pages, all handwritten, sloppy in places, smudged. The first sentence stopped my breath cold. If you're reading this, you finally did it. You left. And I'm sorry. She wrote that a year ago. She dated it at the top. July 17th. My birthday. She said she'd felt it for months, the coldness, the way my eyes started searching for exits even while we were watching TV. She confessed, in plain language, that she had been distant, that she was scared, that she'd become addicted to the thrill of being wanted by someone new and unfamiliar. But the twist? She didn't name anyone. No, he. No apologies for a specific man. Just phrases like, I know I crossed lines, and I kept pieces of myself hidden because I didn't think you'd want them anymore. She said she missed the old version of us, when we used to laugh while brushing our teeth, and that she didn't know how to ask for help when she started feeling small in her own life. Said she felt like a passenger in a relationship she didn't know how to drive anymore. That every time I asked, are you okay? She wanted to say no, but didn't. She ended it with something that broke me in a way I wasn't prepared for. If I could undo it all, I would. But I know I can't. So if you're gone, please know this wasn't your failure. You loved me even when I didn't deserve it. I see that now. I just hope you find someone who never makes you feel invisible the way I did. I hope you forgive me someday, not for me, but so it stops eating at you. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it and put it back in the envelope, my fingers trembling. And that's when something inside me broke open, not the same kind of break from the other nights. Not rage. Not even grief. Just this hollow ache of all the things we never said when we had the chance. All the times I swallowed the words, and she dodged the truths. All the invisible lines we crossed without even realizing we were drifting apart. I don't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But for the first time since I walked out, I didn't feel like I was fleeing from a fire. I felt like I was burying something, really burying it. A part of my life that needed to be mourned, not escaped. I left the diner without finishing my food. Drove until the gas tank was nearly dry. And when I pulled into the next town over, one with no history, no mutual friends, no shadows, I booked a room with monthly rates and paid in cash. I didn't know what came next. Still don't. But I opened a new bank account the next morning. I applied for a new job. And for the first time in years, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't just see the man she left behind. I saw someone trying to start over. I didn't expect to meet anyone. That's not what this was about. This wasn't some melodramatic soul-searching journey where I find myself and fall into someone else's arms like a bad streaming series. I didn't shave for days. I looked like I hadn't slept in a week, because I hadn't. My clothes still smelled faintly of her lavender detergent. I wasn't healed. I was surviving. But life doesn't always wait for you to be ready. It started with a dog. A scrappy mutt named Whiskey who ran straight into my legs while I was sitting outside a hardware store, drinking lukewarm gas station coffee like it was a lifeline. He was muddy, collarless, panting like he'd just escaped a circus. I nearly spilled the coffee on myself trying to dodge him, and before I could react, someone shouted from across the street. A man, maybe late 50s, broad-shouldered with hands like sandpaper and a voice that carried across concrete like it owned the ground it walked on. Whiskey. Damn it, boy, you can't just tackle strangers. That's how I met Charlie. He came jogging over, leash in one hand and a half-eaten granola bar in the other. He apologized, shook my hand, offered me a clean shirt from the back of his truck even though I told him I was fine. He didn't ask questions. Didn't pry. Just sat down beside me and talked about the weather, the busted plumbing at his shop, the mayor's useless new speed bumps. I didn't know why, but I listened. And then, I talked. Not all of it. Not the name. Not the recording or the stranger's messages or the folded wedding photo I'd buried under motel sink pipes. But I told him the outline, that I left someone. That she never really noticed I was there until I wasn't. That I was stuck in the in-between, not grieving, not angry, just numb. Charlie didn't look at me with pity or surprise. He nodded like he'd been there before. Then he said something that still sits with me like a weight I'm not sure I want to put down. You'd be shocked how many people mistake familiarity for love. They think he's still here means he's happy. But ghosts live in marriages all the time, Ben. You just got tired of haunting yours. He didn't ask me to explain. He didn't offer therapy or cliché slogans. He just handed me a flyer. Need help, he said. I run a repair shop. Cash under the table if you want something that doesn't ask questions or require a resume. I took it, even though I had no real experience beyond replacing a few pipes and fixing the occasional loose cabinet hinge. The next day, I showed up. Just to do something other than rot in a motel room wondering if she was telling her friends I'd had a breakdown. The shop was quiet, old, cluttered in a comforting way. He handed me a toolbox, pointed at a busted sink in the back room, and said, "Don't flood it, and you can come back tomorrow." I didn't flood it. I came back the next day, and the one after that. For a week, I worked in silence. Then I started talking, then laughing. I hadn't laughed in months. Not real laughter. Not the kind that surprises you. And on the 7th day, Charlie handed me a dusty manila folder and said, "You ever consider making this official? If you're sticking around, I could use another set of hands." The folder held the paperwork to register as an independent contractor. A real name on a real line. A new beginning, not dramatic, not earth-shattering, but mine. I didn't know what to say. I hadn't felt useful in so long. I forgot what it meant to be needed for something other than a monthly rent split and fixing Wi-Fi issues she pretended were beneath her. That night, I stared at that folder under the motel's flickering ceiling light and realized something I hadn't let myself feel since I left. I wasn't angry at her anymore. Not really. What I felt was freeing. I wasn't waiting for her call. I wasn't counting the days since her last message. I wasn't trying to piece together the version of myself that had made her cheat. Because I'd met someone, not a romantic partner, not a therapist, but a man who reminded me I wasn't broken beyond repair. I was just rebuilding. And as I lay back on that creaky mattress, I got a notification I hadn't expected. New email from Raina Jennings. Subject, "I'm coming there. Please don't ignore this." I read it once, then twice. And when I clicked it open, I realized she wasn't just trying to talk. She was trying to move in on the wreckage. And she brought something with her. I should have known that email was a warning. Not a plea. Not a confession. A warning wrapped in carefully chosen words. "Please don't ignore this," she wrote, like I hadn't spent the last year being ignored while sitting 3 feet from her on our couch, eating dinner in silence while she laughed with strangers in her phone. The message wasn't long. Just a few lines, oddly formal. She said she was in the area for a speaking gig and thought maybe we could talk. Just talk. Just see where we were. Where we were. We were in ruins. I didn't reply. I didn't even open it again. I went to work the next day, fixed a busted fence post at the back of Charlie's shop, pretended the email hadn't gotten under my skin. But by sunset, when I pulled into the motel lot, I saw the rental car parked beside my spot. Silver. Clean. Out of place. And her suitcase leaning against the bumper. She wasn't in the car. She was on the second-floor balcony, arms folded like she was freezing even though it was 72 degrees. I paused at the bottom of the stairs. I thought about turning around. I thought about calling Charlie and asking to crash in the back of the shop. But something pulled me up each step, like gravity didn't care what my brain wanted. She didn't smile when she saw me. She looked scared. And I couldn't tell if it was guilt, regret, or something more performative. Her makeup was lighter than usual. Her hair was pulled back the way she wore it before her personal branding became a second job. "Hi," she said. Soft. Careful. Like I was a cornered animal. I said nothing. Just unlocked my door and walked in. I left it open behind me. She followed. The moment she stepped inside, it hit me, the smell. That scent that used to mean home. Her shampoo. Her perfume. The subtle sweetness that used to make me feel safe. Now it made my chest tighten. Not because I missed it, but because it didn't belong in this room. In this new life. She sat on the edge of the bed like she still had a claim to it. I stayed standing. "I know I should have told you," she started. "About everything. I was afraid. Of how far we drifted. Of admitting what I'd done. And I was afraid of you leaving. I thought if I could just hold it together long enough, maybe you'd come back to me without knowing why you left." I let out a laugh. Not a nice one. The kind that comes from disbelief, not amusement. "So your plan was to wait until I forgot I was miserable?" She flinched. "I was selfish," she said. "I won't defend it. I told myself you were fading too, that we both were. That it wasn't just me." I crossed my arms. "But it was you." She nodded. Slowly. For once, no argument. I started seeing someone else before I even realized I wanted out. It wasn't about him. Not really. He just paid attention. Asked me things. Touched me like I mattered. Her voice cracked. That used to gut me. But now? It sounded like a delayed consequence. I didn't love him, she added. I just loved not being invisible. And I finally spoke. You weren't invisible. You just stopped looking in my direction. She looked down at her hands like they could offer her some kind of redemption. I'm not here to fix everything, she said. I know I can't. I'm scared, Ben. I don't know who I am without you. I stood there, my heartbeat steady, my breath slow. That's the difference between us, I said. I had to find out who I was without you, because I already lived like you were gone. She didn't argue. She just nodded again. That scared, unsure version of her, I didn't recognize it. Maybe she'd become a stranger to herself, too. I brought some things, she said, gesturing toward the suitcase. Photos. Old letters. Some of your stuff I found after you left. I thought maybe. No, I said, and my voice finally felt like it belonged to me again. I don't need any of it. But you don't get to come back just because it's quieter without me. You chose to walk somewhere else. I just finally stopped following. She looked like she wanted to cry, but the tears didn't come. Maybe they dried up months ago. Maybe she didn't have any left for me. I didn't kick her out. I didn't yell. I just stepped into the bathroom and closed the door. I ran the tap, stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror above the sink, and whispered to myself, don't open the door again. When I came back out, she was gone. The suitcase still sat in the hallway. I didn't touch it. And for the first time, I realized that leaving wasn't the end of our story. Her coming back. That was. 3 weeks passed. She never came back for the suitcase. It sat outside my motel room like a time capsule, one I had no desire to open. I thought about tossing it in a dumpster or dropping it off at some storage unit, but in the end, I just left it there. I figured, if she really wanted what was inside, she'd come get it. And if not, well, then it belonged to the version of her that no longer existed in my world. I didn't hear from her again. No texts. No emails. No pop-ins. Just silence. And to my surprise, that silence started to feel less like absence and more like peace. In the weeks that followed, I found myself waking up earlier, not out of stress or insomnia, but because I wanted to. I'd step outside before work and drink my coffee slowly, watching the sun hit the roofs of buildings I'd never noticed before. Charlie taught me how to replace a radiator coil and patch drywall the right way. The work was hard, honest, and uncomplicated, a far cry from tiptoeing around emotional landmines every day. Eventually, I moved out of the motel. Charlie had a cousin who was looking to sublet a little studio above her antique shop downtown. It smelled like old wood and cinnamon. There were scuffs on the floor and one window that whistled in the wind, but it was mine. I bought my own silverware. A new coffee mug. A cheap second-hand couch that didn't carry ghosts in the cushions. And slowly, I started to build a life that felt real. One afternoon, I walked past a small bookstore tucked between a barber shop and a dry cleaner. A sign in the window read, "Quiet hours. Come in, breathe. We'll meet you where you are." I went in. The woman behind the counter was sorting through a box of used books. She looked up, smiled, and said, "You look like someone who's finally stopped running." I didn't know what to say. I just smiled back and asked where she kept the essays. We talked for 15 minutes. About writing. About the smell of old paper. About how everyone should be allowed one big, messy mistake without it defining the rest of their story. Her name was Ivy. I went back the next day. And the next. We didn't rush anything. There were no grand gestures. Just shared silences, long walks, and slow truths. She never asked me what I'd run from, and I never asked her if she had, too. It didn't matter. We were both in the same chapter now. A few days ago, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note, folded carefully. It read, "You don't have to be fully healed to be worth loving. You just have to be honest about where it still hurts." I keep it on my fridge now, held up by a crooked magnet shaped like a dinosaur. I haven't forgotten what Raina did. I never will. But forgiveness isn't always about making peace with them. Sometimes, it's about setting down the weight of who they made you feel like. I'm no longer the man waiting for her to come home. I'm not the ghost of a relationship that should have ended long before it collapsed. I'm a guy with a wrench in one hand and a coffee in the other. A guy who can sleep through the night without wondering if the person beside me is texting someone else. I didn't lose everything. I lost her. And in the space that left behind, I finally found me. Thanks for listening, Reddit. And if you're sitting on the edge of your own goodbye, unsure if you're strong enough to take that first step, let this be your sign. You are. You really, truly are.